Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to the University of Wollongong School of Law and University Alumni Relations Team event, Live Large, How to Forge an International Career. We're going to be talking to 3 alumni who are forging careers overseas, asking them how they got to where they are and finding out how you too might best prepare yourself for a global career if that's one of your goals. So I'd like to acknowledge that country for Aboriginal peoples is an interconnected set of ancient and sophisticated relationships. The University of Wollongong spreads across many interrelated Aboriginal countries that are bound by this sacred landscape, from Sydney to the Southern Highlands to the South Coast, from freshwater to bitterwater to salt, from city to urban to rural. The University of Wollongong acknowledges the custodianship of the Aboriginal peoples of this place and space that has kept alive the relationships between all the living things. The university acknowledges the real and devastating impact of colonisation on Aboriginal countries and peoples, and further commit ourselves to truth-telling, healing, and education. Okay, so what I would like to do next is introduce to you the members of our panel very briefly before we start peppering them with questions. So on our panel today, we have Mr. Luke Zadkovich. Luke's a leading international lawyer in complex litigation matters and commercial arbitration and project advisory work. He co-founded Zeiler Floyd Zadkovich, an international firm with offices in London, New York, Vienna, Chicago, Sydney, and Houston. Luke's practice is built on over 16 years of both private practice and in-house experience, including work at major law firms and also a large marine insurer. Luke is actually admitted in 3 jurisdictions, admitted in England and Wales, in the US, in the state of New York, and also in Australia. He manages an array of complex cross-border cases and projects, often with matters in many different jurisdictions at the same time. He holds a BA LLB from UOW and a Master's in Law and International Business Law from King's College in London. He has a keen interest in technology for electronic commodity trading and shipping. He's recognised by Chambers and Partners and Legal 500 in the UK and US for his work in international shipping law. Also tonight we have Aiden and Lerch. He's an associate at Zeiler Floyd Zadkovich. He's based in London and Sydney. He graduated with his Bachelor of Laws Honours First Class from UOW in 2018 and was awarded the University Medal, the first in his law cohort that year. Following graduation, Aidan was recruited as a Judge's Associate. He's authored numerous publications in his fields of research and has just completed studying at the world-renowned Bachelor of Civil Law at the University of Oxford. In fact, he was the William Asprey BCL, the Bachelor of Civil Law Scholar for 2020-21. And he's about to begin his PhD at the University of Oxford as a Clarendon Scholar, all the while whilst working as an associate at Zeiler Floyd Zadkovich. I feel like a tremendous underachiever. The more I say about you. Lucy Noble. Lucy, last but not least, she's an associate with Zeiler Floyd Zadkovich. She's based in the London office. She graduated from UOW in 2020 with the Bachelor of Laws, Bachelor of International Studies in International Relations and Mandarin. While she was studying, Lucy did a semester at Shanghai International University in China, and she joined Zeiler Floyd Zadkovich, which is a paralegal, in October last year after participating in their 2020 vacation scheme. She's currently completing a 3-month legal secondment with Peninsula, a leading global trader of marine energy. So there's our panel members. And I might, Luke, ask you first just to give us a brief rundown of the sort of work that Zeiler Floyd Zadkovich do, a bit about the firm and the work they do.
Thank you. Thank you very much, John. And thank you to Trish Mundy, Dean of Law, and to the University of Wollongong for the invitation to present today. It's wonderful to participate in this series. I've been watching some of the other seminars that have been on, and there's such an array of wonderful alumni that have come out of the university. So to be able to have this opportunity is wonderful, and I know I speak for the 3 of us in saying that. We're all very proud UOW alumni and would love to share our stories today. We also acknowledge country, and I see on the chat that we've had some acknowledgement from, in particular, the Dharawal country and also Aurora country. So thanks for those special mentions on the chat, and let's keep the comments coming. So as a firm, Zeiler Floyd Zadkovich, we've been going now for about 4 years. We're an international law firm. As John mentioned, we've got offices in multiple locations in New York, London, Chicago, and Vienna are our main bases, and we also practice in Sydney and Houston. We started 4 years ago. We've grown very quickly. We've now got a headcount of about 32 lawyers. Started off as two of us, Ed Floyd and myself, in New York, and we've just kind of grown from there. And really the client uptake and the new cases have led to that growth. About a year ago, we combined with an Austrian arbitration and employment set, which doubled our size as well. So we specialise in international arbitration, international litigation, and transactional work, usually with a cross-border dimension. And really what we're known for is that cross-jurisdictional practice. So working in multiple locations, kind of seamlessly. So in a way different to how some of our competitors and other larger firms operate. It's kind of, we try and put our teams across jurisdictions and leverage the multiple admissions that we've got. We also specialise in certain sectors too. So the commodities and shipping sectors are key sectors. We handle arbitration and litigation in non-sector specific work as well. So yeah, that's I think a little taste of the firm to get us going.
Great, thanks, Luke. And I should add, although Luke will probably be embarrassed for us to say that he's coming to us from Panama this evening, and where it's 3 a.m. So special congratulations. You might think he looks dapper, but he's got his pajamas on underneath, I believe. Is that true?
You're giving away all my secrets, John. But yeah, no, it's funny you mentioned that. A part of international practice is you become au fait at different time zones and working with it. I've just got back from a 3-week European trip, actually, which was just wonderful to be able to get back out there and see the world reopening again.
Okay, you can stop talking about that to Australians. You can stop talking about that to Australians, Luke. We're not interested. Okay, look, but look, thank you for sharing with us a bit about Zeiler Floyd Zadkovich and how the firm has grown and what they do. I now have a number of questions for all of you, but Luke, I'm going to start with you because you've now, I guess, not only come in as originally coming in as someone who was an employee, now you're an employer. My question for you is, what are some of the transferable skills, both soft and technical, that are in demand across the world? And that's, I guess, not just in law, but also as a professional in general. What are some of those transferable skills that you believe are in demand across the world from your own observations?
Yeah, look, I think it's a great question. And some of the skills that jump out at me, if I'm not sure soft skills is quite how I describe them, because I think they're so important. But some of those that really jump out at me are things like problem solving. You know, the ability to size up an issue or a problem and then think creatively about how to solve that problem. And that goes across all sorts of disciplines, all sorts of kind of businesses, or, you know, in government work or non-profit work as well. But that ability to size up an issue and look at things from different angles, different perspectives, discuss with other people, how to kind of unpack things and then come up with a solution. And I suppose part of coming up with the solution is also then to be able to express yourself clearly. You know, whether that is in writing, emails, something very detailed like an academic paper, or a submission or a pleading in private practice. But the ability to write clearly is very important. And also, I suppose, the ability to explain things. It struck me over and over again through practice how important it is to be able to take a complicated issue and put it into layman's speak and just be able to explain it to, you know, to your mum, or be able to explain it to someone you're sitting on the bus with. That ability is very, very important. And I think in making connections with clients or stakeholders or whoever it might be, that ability to explain complicated issues in a straightforward way is very important. And I think the other kind of skill or, or way to approaching practice or work is the ability to make connections with people and to really connect properly. And that comes from, diversity of experience. It comes from understanding different cultures. And these are all softer skills that I think are very much fostered at the university. I know I carry a lot of them from my time at the university forward. And then more on the technical side, I suppose, clarity of expression runs into technical as well. But attention to detail is a really key technical skill, and that goes across any discipline in my view. The ability to really get into something, not just look at it quickly, be able to come up with, the first things that come to mind, but that ability to really get into the detail. I think that's something as an employer that always impresses me, and running with that are the analytical skills and the research skills that allow you to really look at the detail, make sense of it, draw in other analogies, and then explain it in a very clear way.
Thank you, Luke. Well, this next question I've got is to all three of you, but we might reverse the pecking order, as it were, and I might ask Lucy to respond first. So what I want to know is some ideas as to where students and alumni might start if they're looking for international employment opportunities. What's a good starting point or some paths they could follow? Lucy?
Thank you for the question, John. So I was thinking about this one myself and kind of thinking back to the sorts of places that I looked when I was first looking for a graduate role. And I think some really good advice that I've received is to, before you even start looking for a specific role, is to identify where you want to be working, or in what sort of roles you want to be working, or for what sort of companies you want to be working, and identifying those kind of areas first, and then reaching out either directly if possible, or through engagement with that particular company or those particular roles on LinkedIn or on any other sharing platform, and looking for roles that way, I guess, kind of direct to the sort of roles and the companies, rather than a more general job search platform or things like that, because I think that also demonstrates quite a bit of initiative in going after those roles and knowing what you're after out of those roles.
Okay, thanks, Lucy. Aidan, what could you add to that in terms of, because I know obviously Lucy had done the vacation period with Zeiler Floyd Zadkovich before she started, so she knew a little bit about what she was getting herself in for and then a bit about the firm. How did you sort of go down the path of exploring international opportunities and end up where you've ended up?
Yeah, so I would agree with all that Lucy's just said, especially kind of firstly figuring out kind of an idea of what you'd like to do. But for me, it really came from speaking with UOW law tutors who are actually at UOW now and kind of know of the different UOW alumni across the world who you can get in touch with to speak with and jump on from there. So that would be my advice, kind of start speaking with people at UOW, because that's how I found out about Zeiler Floyd Zadkovich and Luke Zadkovich, and also about Professor James Goodcamp, who is also a UOW alumni from Oxford.
Right. Okay. And so how do you just cold call Luke or cold email him, or how did
So essentially, I spoke with one of the UOW staff who knew Luke personally, whose husband knew Luke personally, because I said, look, I'd like to just try and do something international. And she said, oh, I know this guy, he's really down to earth. Let me get in touch with him and see if he's looking for someone to join. And she essentially reached out for me.
Wow.
And then that's how the connection happened.
There you go. I guess if you don't reach out, you'll never know. And Luke, what about you? Because, you know, I know that before you moved overseas, you'd worked in Australia, and I think from talking to you, you've said you never really sort of thought you'd end up that way, but you've developed a desire to explore and push those boundaries out a bit further. So how did you get started?
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit on that. It's funny you brought up that, Aidan. It's a small world, is what I've learned over the years. It's a small world, and yeah, I completely reiterate what Aidan and Lucy have said. I think their recommendations are fantastic. That's how they got in touch with us to start with. The direct approach is always encouraged. It does show confidence. It does show that, you know, you've got something about you. But more importantly, it shows that you're interested in the firm. And if you do it in the right way, if you have identified an interest, if you've written some papers on it or gotten involved in a network in that area, you maybe follow, like, this is something that would work with me. If you follow a case that we've been on, and you write a direct approach and say, look, I was following this decision. I see that you were involved and really interested in the case for XYZ. Can I find 10 minutes to talk with you? And just start that connection. That works. You'd be surprised. That won't just work at our firm. That will work in many places. Whether it leads to an actual position at that firm or not, who knows? But it will start the process. And I think that's a really good way of going about it. As for me, John, yeah, it's funny reflecting back for a presentation like this and thinking where I started and where I am today. If you'd asked me, would I be running with my partners an international law firm in multiple jurisdictions, I probably would have laughed at you, and that would have been a cover for, you know, how or how would that ever happen? And in some ways, I didn't set off to do that. I didn't, you know, start back at university and think that's what I want to do. This is the linear progression to get there. I started working in Sydney. Started at a small CBD law firm doing kind of teacher-related work, and then moved to national law firms in the insurance field. I did always have that yearning to do something international. You know, I wrote about international issues in my dissertation at university, and I always had an interest. Like, I think probably came from home, in that I wanted to see the world and explore it. But at that time, coming out of university, was more to go and see the world rather than go and explore international work opportunities. But I did have the presence of mind, at least, to do a few years in Sydney. I learned a lot from the firms that I worked at and the people that I worked for, and was able to cross-qualify into a role in London as a solicitor. So I landed in a big firm into this a different area of law called shipping and commodities law and energy work, not really knowing much about it, but having had a very good academic grounding and good start to professional life in the Sydney law firm, and took to it and really enjoyed it. And I suppose looking back now to see, you know, how did I get from where I was to where I am today, it was taking kind of small deliberate steps along the way, but actually taking risks or doing things differently, or, you know, backing yourself, I suppose you could say, just getting out there and seeing what the world has to offer. And one thing I can most definitely say, hand on heart, to all the students at Wollongong coming out already, already graduated, is that the learning and the degree and all of that you get from UOW really does set you up for any role. I have not in any way had any inferiority complexes or concerns about, you know, where I've come from. To the contrary, I've been, pleasantly pleased, or not surprised, but just really pleased with the grounding that I got. And I've worked in some of the largest law firms in England. So yeah, I think that's kind of what I'd say.
Okay, great. And look, Aiden and Lucy, you might not want to answer this, bearing in mind your boss is sort of in the virtual room. But do you have a mentor, someone that has sort of, I guess, helped you get to where you are, and how important is that? So, Aiden, do you have someone who's perhaps been in that role?
Yeah. So I've kind of been lucky enough to have probably 3 mentors that have been super helpful throughout my career. So firstly, starting at UOW, Yvonne Apollo. She was my taught law tutor and later honours supervisor. And she's just been fantastic at kind of being my support and always being there to write a reference, and just giving me advice on kind of not only the practical side of things, but also the academic side, if that's something that you're interested in. And then when I was lucky enough to study at Oxford kind of as a student, so that was while I was an undergraduate, I met James Goodcamp, who's a professor at Oxford, and he's been a great help. Also is there to write references for me, but kind of gave me lots of advice on what it's like to be an academic in England, and kind of motivated me to apply for the BCL and ultimately do the PhD at Oxford, which has been great. And then finally, Luke, who has just been my mentor in practice, which is so important, and showed me, I mean, Luke is just a brilliant commercial litigator, and I've learned so much from him. So I think I've been very lucky. But my main piece of advice on this question is just to get to know people and show that you're interested. And I think if they think that you're interested in them and their career and what they're doing, then they'll give back to you and be that support person for you throughout the entirety of the career.
That's great. And Lucy, what about you in terms of mentors, having a mentor? How's that featured?
When I was in my final year at UAW, I did the Law Society structured graduate mentorship program, which I would definitely recommend to anyone that perhaps doesn't have a huge legal network or anything like that. And I found the support I received from my mentor at that time to be pretty invaluable, just in sorting through graduate applications and embarking on my next steps at that stage. But then I think as a current mentor and someone that I feel has really directly impacted on my practice, when I was completing the internship at ZFZ, Zeiler Floyd Zadkovich, earlier in the year, mid last year, sorry, the dates are running together now. One of the senior associates at the firm named Callum, he was a great teacher for me. And I think that from there, he's turned into a bit of a mentor for me in helping me along and teaching me. And I think that he was one of the big reasons why I was interested in coming to the firm, was to learn from him and the other extremely bright individuals, and just learning and I guess trying to echo his skills in legal practice.
Okay, great. And someone asked,
sorry, can I just chip in on this one, John? I just wanted to add, look, the point about mentor-mentee, if that's the right word, relationships, is that it's two ways. The mentor gets so much out of the relationship as well. It really is a two-way street, and there's learning in both directions. So yeah, I think mentors and that concept is a really important one, and one to take through all your practice. And yeah, it's wonderful to hear those comments. Thanks, guys. I'm glad you kept to the script there, Aidan. That was good. But no, jokes aside, I also it'd be remiss of me not to find use the opportunity to mention a mentor of mine as well. It's a chap called Jonathan Tapp, who was a partner at HWL Ebsworth for many years. I think he's a consultant now, and he was the first kind of supervisor I had when I qualified all those years ago, and he really taught me the importance of being a good person, and having that pride and the real sense of pride in what you're doing and the work that you're doing, and also as a kind of employer, I suppose, or a supervisor. When I came to him and said, look, I've got this idea to go and travel and see the world, either he was happy to get rid of me, or he said go for it. I think go and explore your dreams, and that for me now, being more in the position on the mentor side, there's some really great lessons in all that. So yeah.
All right, look, I might just interpose a couple of questions that have come in on the chat, and one of them was, did any of you have members of your family that were lawyers that you could sort of draw upon as a contact, or that influenced your decision to join the profession, or you sort of first in family to be lawyers?
It's a great question.
Sorry, Luke. Sorry, you go first.
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't. is the short answer. I was the first to get into law. I grew up in Woonona. I went to Woonona Primary, Woonona High School. I went to Wollongong, obviously, and I come from a household of teachers. Both my parents are teachers, so very encouraging in education, and particularly in public education. But yeah, it was all about I think the lesson I got from my parents was, do what you'd like to do, go and see the world and explore. And so it was a big journey for me. And my anecdote on that is, I can remember I did at least think, well, I'm doing a law degree, I might as well try and understand what it's like to be in a law firm. So I started as a paralegal quite early on, and I worked throughout my degree, really. And I can remember one of the first days of that firm turning up and someone saying, oh, can you go to the return of subpoena? I was just standing there looking at them, with this look on my face of, what are you talking about? I didn't even know what a subpoena was. I couldn't spell it, let alone, know what it was. And yeah, I had to kind of explain what a subpoena was. So.
It's a tricky word, Luke. It's all right. It's a tricky word. And what about Lucy, Aidan? You come from legal families, as it were, or have relatives who have lawyers? No?
No, I'm the same as Luke. I don't have any relatives that are in the legal profession or that are lawyers. It was just an interest of mine that I was definitely encouraged to pursue.
And what about you, Aidan?
Yeah, I'm the same as Luke and Lucy. So I went to Buller High School. My parents are teachers. Well, my dad's a professor in physics at UOW. My mum's a teacher. And I just wanted to do law, yeah.
And Lucy, someone's asked whether your overseas study, like when you did your exchange in Shanghai, whether that doing something like that would be helpful in getting you into a overseas job. And I guess, Luke, from an employer's perspective, you could probably indicate that too. So what did you think? Was that helpful for you?
I definitely can't speak to it from an employer's perspective, but I think that on a personal level, it was a great experience for me, just not only the studying overseas, but also the living overseas, and getting some pretty invaluable experience just from learning how to live in a different culture. And I think that has been pretty beneficial to me now, living in London. I've kind of already got that experience behind me. So it wasn't a huge jump to move over here for work, because it's now within my comfort zone to.
Sure. Thank you, Lucy. And Luke, would that be something as a employer in a firm that deals internationally, would that be something you'd see as a plus on a student's CV?
Definitely. It's something that leaps off the page. Language skills, time, traveling, time learning about different cultures as well. It goes beyond just the black and white of language, and that can be quite important, particularly in an international practice. We have cases in all parts of the world, and often are looking at documents that are in Spanish or Russian or what have you, and we have language skills within the team, and so that was something that leaped off the page on Lucy's application, quite frankly. But I think thinking about it from an employer's perspective, it's not just the language, it's more what that means about the well-roundedness of the applicant or the candidate. Sure. And in Australia, I think we have such a rich multicultural society as is, so we learn a lot about other cultures just implicitly in growing up there and somewhere like the university.
Yeah, because I see that in fact one of the questions that Rose had asked in the chat about whether it was a benefit or was encouraged to know another language. And from what you say, Luke, it certainly would be seen as a plus, but it's not just about the language. It's if someone's had that overseas experience, I guess you see them as someone who perhaps can be a bit independent, be able to function in another culture and all those sorts of pluses that might go with that. Yeah,
exactly. It's not like having a second language is a prerequisite or anything like that, but I think it's certainly an advantage. It does add something to the overall package, so to speak. But I say that from my perspective. My running joke on this is I only know two languages. I know English and I know Australian. But other than that, I don't know another language either. So it hasn't held me back too much.
Okay. Well, what about postgraduate study then? Luke, we've heard that Aidan has done postgraduate study. You've done postgraduate study in the country that you're working in. And Aidan's still doing postgraduate study. So is that something that's important, do you think? And is it something being done to, I guess, value add on your Australian qualifications, or is it something that's expected, or is it something you've done out of interest? What are some of the motivations behind doing further study in the country that you work in?
Yeah, if I take this first, I'm really interested to hear Aidan's take as well. On postgraduate studies, I think they can be immensely useful. I really do. They're not necessary to get a job. I wouldn't say, across the board, everyone go off and do postgraduate studies, and you need to do that to get into an international role. But they can be quite important, particularly if you don't have a job to go straight into. I think first going and doing some postgraduate studies in a jurisdiction where you'd like to work can be useful. Not only does it demonstrate that you're interested in an area of law, which is often what an employer is looking for, right? If I give an example of that, one of the areas that we do a lot at our firm is shipping law. And if a candidate has done an LLM at Southampton or Cardiff or Tulane targeted on maritime law, then that's showing to us that they've got a serious interest in that area of law. So it helps in that way. I think it also, coming back to the kind of the cultural element, it also helps in understanding how a country works. And there are differences. There are even, differences, I think, in Western countries like going to England or the US from Australia, and understanding, the dynamics of that country and the legal profession, or whatever business environment or government environment you'd like to move into, can be really helpful.
Actually, was getting admitted in England difficult, Luke?
I had it easy, to be honest. Back in the day when I transferred over, all I had to do was ethics and accounts, and I got a rubber stamp, and there you go.
I can see Lucy and Aidan shaking their heads. Difficult now, is it? Aidan, have you been admitted now in England, or yeah?
So I am going through being registered as a foreign lawyer, but I will have to sit. I mean, Lucy is about to start the process. She'll know a bit more about me, but you have to sit a few exams.
Oh wow! So what's that involve, Lucy? What are you doing with your exams?
So I will shortly be applying or sitting the exams to become a solicitor here, and it's quite a few more exams than it sounds like it was when Luke went through.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and I think Luke, from memory, I remember you contacted me when you were applying to get admitted in New York. That was quite a few hurdles to get admitted in America.
Yeah, I didn't have it easy on the New York side of things. So that was around 2017, I think. I sat that exam, and at the time had a 9-month-old and another one on the way. So I remember my wife saying to me, "You have one shot at doing this exam, and that's it. You're going to pass."
Okay. Well, actually, related.
Jokes aside, it is doable. It's doable. It's not beyond reach for anyone going through a law degree at Wollongong. It takes time. It takes dedication. You've got to carve out the time. But they're all doable.
Okay. I guess that relates in a way. Someone else has asked a question on the chat about your reference before, Luke, to small but deliberate steps to get to where you wanted to get to. Could you give someone's asked, could you give some examples, some specific examples of some of those steps that you decided to take?
Yeah, I think the first one that jumps to mind is when I was thinking about moving from Sydney to London. And before actually deciding to go, I got in contact with a HR director of a friend, basically a father of a friend I'd met, an English woman. Stayed in contact. She explained that her father, he was a director at Burgess Salmon. So I got in touch with him just coming out of university. And he was the one who explained to me, well, if you do 2 years of post-qualification experience in Sydney first, this is what it was back in the day anyway, I'm not sure if it's quite like that now, then you could cross-qualify into England with just doing the ethics and accounting. Whereas I was keen to get off after university and start traveling, and had I gone at that stage, it would have been as a paralegal. So I made the deliberate decision to stay on. I learned a huge amount in those 2.5 years at Ebsworth anyway, so it was very enriching. But it was a deliberate decision to stay on, to make sure I have that experience, so then when I move over to London, I can cross-qualify as a solicitor, have a bit more money in the bank for the travels rather than just as a paralegal. And that was a step. And then the other one that kind of occurs to me is, so I wanted to make the move from Sydney to London. I didn't know much about the English market at all, and I had primarily worked in insurance law, doing professional indemnity and financial lines type insurance work. And I lined up a series of interviews in London, some of the big firms like Barlow Light Gilbert at the time, Mayer Brown, and a couple of others, and this kind of off-piste option at Holman Fenwick Willen, now called HFW, in shipping and commodities law. And that was set up by someone I knew, a partner who I knew at Ebsworth's. And I went for all these interviews, and the one that I thought I'd take was the HFW one in this different area of law. And my thinking at the time was, I'm going to be overseas for a couple of years, let's experience something else, and then I can bring that experience back. And so I kind of took a step into the unknown. I didn't really know what I was doing in that area of law, but it was a deliberate step to learn something differently, and that small step of saying, okay, I am going to do this for the experience and see where it takes me. And as it turns out, that's become a specialism of mine.
Right. And I guess that relates to the next question I was going to ask of Aidan and Lucy in relation to companies. If someone was looking to work overseas, should they only be jumping on Google and finding out who the biggest firms are, or should they be seeking out perhaps some boutique firms or specialist type firms in an area that more aligns with their practice areas, or should they take a shotgun approach? What would you recommend? Either of you. Lucy, do you want to go first?
I would definitely recommend pursuing something that you're interested in, because I think that really comes across not only in your enjoyment of the work, but also in your application or your commitment, kind of building on a bit what Luke was talking about before. If you can show that you're interested in something, or that comes across in the way that you're talking about it, I think that is definitely a positive in any application. And I think that can be true for a boutique law firm, or for a huge law firm that has a sector in an area that you're interested in. But I think for me personally, my decision to join a boutique firm was because that aligns more with my way of learning. But I think that's definitely a personal choice. And you can work in different roles, both in a boutique or a larger firm.
And what about you, Aidan? Did you pursue or think of other firms? I know you had this contact who put you on to Luke, and it seemed to be an instant fit. Yeah. So thinking of other possible avenues if that didn't work out?
Yep. So I think my main piece of advice would be, like Lucy said, find out what you're interested in, or kind of have an idea. And then if you can, find someone who went to UOW who you may not know, and just send them an email, preferably from your UOW account, and just say, look, I'm interested in this area. I see that you're doing this. I see that you went to UOW. What's your story? Could we have a 15-minute Zoom chat? Because I think showing that interest to someone who's been where you are now at UOW is just something that they'll certainly kind of want to help you with. I find that everyone I've met from UOW or who have previously studied there are just willing to give advice and speak with each other and maintain that contact. So I think that would be my main piece of advice.
Good. Actually, one of my questions to both of you was how can students utilise or access the alumni network with people overseas when they're currently based in Australia? So, and you've already answered that, Aidan. So perhaps targeting alumni overseas with a view to, as you said, just asking if they're willing to have a chat. And you've found people have been, by and large, willing to do that and cooperative.
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, I knew that James Goodcamp was at the University of Oxford, and I actually emailed him and just said, look, I'm from UOW, I'm excited. I'd really like to go to Oxford. I'm interested in tort law. I know that this is what you do. But what are the opportunities at Oxford? How can I go over there as an undergraduate? And he came back with me and kind of introduced me to this visiting student program where you can go for 6 months, kind of like an exchange. And then I ultimately did that. And I mean, that was kind of a life-changing step for me, just from a cold email, just because he knew I was interested in what he was doing.
I guess affirming too, because you're part of it is probably worried that they'll either won't answer at all or dismiss your email. And yeah, it's nice. And someone's asked Trish has asked in the chat, what was it about Lucy and Aidan, Luke, what did you see in them? And I don't want to embarrass them or embarrass you. What was it you saw in them that you thought they'd be a good fit for your firm?
I think for both Aidan and Lucy, they have that get up and go about them that I mentioned before, that they are confident, they're interested in, in the law, they were interested in the firm and what we do, and really demonstrated that to us. Each of them have very strong CVs and a lot that goes to them. Aidan's, his academics and the excellence there is exceptional, and we wanted to find a way to work with Aidan when he approached us, and it started off on working on a paper together. And it's a little bit, affirming what Aidan's talking about is. Aidan approached us, we connected really well, and we wanted to find a way to work together. So it just grew from there, and from working on the paper together, we, in both directions, liked working with each other, and Aidan got to meet other people in the team, and from there, the role just developed, and we couldn't be happy to see what Aidan has achieved so far, and are really excited about what he has ahead. And Lucy came to us through the vacation scheme that we run every year. And we've been fortunate to have a number of UOW candidates come through that vacation scheme, which we've run virtually the last couple of years. And through that scheme, Lucy had the ability to meet many people in the team, and vice versa. So many in the team got to meet Lucy. Through that process, really demonstrated to us that she's an exceptional candidate and has that real interest in, as I mentioned right at the outset, that real interest in problems and solving them, and then the ability to express the solution clearly. And I know that's already coming through. As mentioned earlier, Lucy's actually doing a short secondment at one of our key clients. And the feedback that we're getting on Lucy is that, without making you blush or anything, Lucy, but the feedback we're getting is that what has really come across is the ability to synthesize complex legal issues and apply them in a very commercial role, which is the skill of an in-house lawyer, really. And so that came through in how Lucy approached the vacation scheme, and it's not surprising to hear that that's coming through in her practice as well.
Okay, thank you, Luke. And look, Lucy and Aidan, do you know, or did you find it that firms in overseas have different protocols or different approaches to things like CVs and interviews and that whole process? Are there different things they want to see, or have it set it out? And if so, how did you learn about that sort of stuff? Or was it pretty much the same sort of material you gather together when going for a job in Australia? Lucy?
Well, I think from my perspective, and I'm not sure that this is necessarily unique for international roles, but I think that there's so many other ways to be applying for jobs that is not necessarily just with your resume. So I went through the internship program, and then the role materialized out of that. And Aidan was writing a paper with Luke, and I think that there's just so many other ways which firms are not necessarily aiming to recruit, but are recruiting just by building those connections rather than a formal recruitment or interview process. So I think just being aware that these sort of alternate forms of recruitment do operate, and just being aware of them and identifying it pretty straight away to recognize that you are presenting yourself in these sort of opportunities.
And Aidan, I guess you're a little bit ahead of Lucy in terms of time now, have been overseas in England. Have you, I imagine you would have bumped into other alumni over there and other UOW grads working in firms. Have you gleaned anything different from them about what they had to do, or how they had to approach applying for jobs in England?
So in my view, there's kind of two sets of alumni. One that are in London now. One half did kind of a vacation scheme at a firm, like Lucy did, and then from there, like, proved to that firm that they were very good workers and had the skills, and then were kind of targeted to come across to London. And the other half generally would do what Luke did, so they do 2 years at a firm in Australia, and then either the firm in Australia had an office in London and they moved across, or again, they really were interested in working in London, so they approached the firm and said, these are the skills I have from Australia. And Australian lawyers are generally in quite high demand because we do kind of a longer law program. So we're quite good not only at the kind of content-based subjects like property law or tort law, but also like evidence and civil procedure and remedies, which kind of give us an edge over those UK students who don't do that in law.
All right, good. Now, someone's asked a more practical, I guess, or personal question, and Matt's asked, look, in terms of, we've been talking about work connections, but what about maintaining your personal connections? How do you find friends? How do you make a home in a new place? How do you deal with homesickness? How do you deal with culture shock? How do you deal with those things? I might ask you, Luke, because you were the first out of the three to head over there. How did you deal with it?
Yeah, it's a journey, is it the best way I can kind of respond to that. I think when I set off, it was all, exciting and off in the big wide world and making friends, from all different parts of the world. And I was in London when a lot was happening. And then actually we had the GFC, so it was a very, tricky time professionally and with all sorts of work coming in the door. But I think a lot of those early years were marked by enjoying being in London, frankly. And so the culture shock was more around, just experiencing that. As I went on, yes, certainly periods of, homesickness and wanting to go home. And for different reasons at different times, I just, enjoyed the journey I was on. And, eventually I married someone from Panama, and we were happily set up there in London for years, and made a lot of friends through work, through the Australian network. I played in a touch rugby team, a touch footy team, I should say. That's what they call it over there, touch rugby. A touch footy team, and called the Raw Prawns. So great Aussie name. I'm still in contact with them. I was out in London, 2 weeks ago for business, and sure enough, we had to have an evening where we all caught up. So I think making friends along the way is really important. It's what makes the whole experience so enriching. And I think that's how I'd answer it. But I have kept in contact with university friends, from school friends, obviously family and what have you, through all the different mediums. And I would love to come back and come and visit again. It's been too long. It's been a good 2.5 years since I've been back. So just waiting for the borders to open, really. Yep, I think you're on mute there.
Yeah, that's a good segue into one of the other questions someone was asking about when COVID struck. And I guess did you feel like you wanted to come back, particularly how England had it so badly? Did any of you really feel, oh, I want to get out of here, I want to be back home in Australia? How did you manage personally and professionally, and how challenging was it? I guess, Lucy, you went around the time COVID seemed to be easing off, didn't you? October last year, but it sort of came back a bit there in England. Did you feel, gosh, have I made the right choice? Did you feel worried, panicked about being over there?
So I actually have only moved over to London about 2 months ago.
So you're working virtually.
Yeah. So, and I think that my take on that is that was really an opportunity for me to work virtually when I wouldn't have really thought about that. That I wouldn't really have thought about that otherwise, and that allowed me to finish my degree and get qualified in New South Wales while simultaneously working with the team in London from home. And so for me, that was an opportunity that I could work that way before coming over into London.
Sure, and you've been backwards and forwards, Aidan, haven't you? While
Yes.
going on. So where are you at the moment? Are you in Australia at the moment?
No, so I'm now in Oxford.
Right.
So the PhD starts on Monday. Well,
officially, wow.
running around like a crazy person doing orientation events at the moment. But I started in London. The pandemic hit. I had to come home for my admission, which was still in person at that time. And the pandemic really hit. And then I was kind of stuck in Australia for a while because everything was uncertain then. And then I came back, so this was in 2020. And then I came back over in October 2020 to do the BCL at Oxford because everything was in person. So they have kind of a in-person requirement. And then the kind of bigger lockdown happened in January of 2021 in the UK. And I decided to come home because everything was online. And just because like my partner is in Australia, so it was a bit difficult for me to say, look, I won't see you for 9 months while I'm in Oxford. So I came back.
Okay, thank you. And look, from an employer's point of view, how's COVID impacted on the business? Has it made it busier or more difficult, or all of the above, or how's it impacted?
We've been quite fortunate. I know for so many people and companies out there, different businesses around the world, it's been an exceptionally difficult time. From the law firm's perspective, we specialise in litigation. We specialise in issues, particularly in commodities and shipping. And so with all the supply chain issues, it's actually been a very busy time for us. And we haven't had the marketing costs that we ordinarily would have in flying around and visiting all our clients. So it has been a busy period of time. I've got to give a big thumbs up to the team. Really, they have really come through during the last 18 months in what has been personally very difficult and upheaval for so many lives, with kids moving around in different parts of the world, and also just the fear that's associated with the whole pandemic, quite understandably. I think what's really been a hallmark of our team is that people have wanted to get stuck in, roll their sleeves up, help out, go that extra mile, work as a team, which is, I couldn't emphasize how important that is enough. That's really been, it's given us a great sense of pride. Practically speaking, it hasn't been that difficult for us because as a boutique firm that covers multiple jurisdictions, we were really already set up to work remotely. I'm regularly on the road, traveling to see clients or to attend courts in different jurisdictions or arbitral panels. So our systems, our software, computers, all of that was really ready-made for virtual working.
Okay. So while I've got you there, Luke, as an employer, someone's asked about, as from an employer's perspective, are you looking for, what's your view on, say, diversity in hiring practices? Are you looking for people from different cultural backgrounds, from different countries, different cultural backgrounds? What are you looking for? Is that something that is promoted in your firm?
I couldn't agree more. It's super important. It's one of the joys of international practice is getting to meet people, work with people from different cultures, learning about how things are done differently, and it's a core part of our firm. We really foster that diversity and learning from each other. We also encourage moving around into different offices, getting multiple kind of qualifications, admissions in different countries. And then as a part of that, on the teams that we put together, we actually see that there's a real advantage and arbitrage in having different jurisdictions working on cases, or people from different jurisdictions working on cases. Because, and we really got this sense quite early on. Ed and I, when we first set up the firm, Ed was is a New York attorney of many years, and I primarily came from the English background. And that's where I spent most of my time at the time we set up. And we would talk through cases or new things that came in through the door, and we would find that if you're looking at a US case and then bringing in some analysis from an English perspective, that you look at things a little bit differently. There's a lot of commonality. There's a lot of English precedent in US law, but the perspective is different. And then when you add in, say, from the Vienna side, a civil law background, into a common law environment and see how that intersects, it really creates some interesting solutions. And as I said earlier, that creative thinking and the ability to look at things differently, I think, is really what sets us apart.
Okay. Well, I'm very conscious of time. We've only got enough time for maybe a quick final question. I guess one thing that some people seem to be pretty interested in, Lucy and Aidan, is how did you juggle all the stuff around visas? Where did you learn how to get working visas, and was that a difficult process to get permission to actually work overseas?
For me personally, I was definitely quite lucky. So because I already had the working relationship with ZFC, I was able to be supported through that. And so I didn't really have too much stress about that on a personal level. But I think something that I wasn't too sure about beforehand is that there's so many different visas that you can apply for. And personally, I'm now in the UK under an ancestry visa, not a work visa, okay, which holds all the same privileges, but I get some more time here because my grandma was born in the UK. So I think that definitely the support is appreciated, but just, I guess, doing your own research into the different options and not just work visa, because there are different options.
Okay, good. And Aidan, sorry, Luke. Yeah.
Can I just mention on that one from an employer's perspective, when there's a will, there's a way. If you want to make the move, if you have the job lined up, if you want to make the move first and try and do some postgraduate study and then look for the role, there's a way of working that out. I think my overarching point on that is I wouldn't let the practicalities of visas or those types of things deter you from exploring the world. If you want to get out there and do something, whether it's study or whether it's a job or just search for a job or explore a different jurisdiction, there are ways of doing it, is the upshot.
Okay. And Aidan, I was going to ask you how you've navigated different beers and those sorts of more difficult cultural questions, but we'll have to leave that because we're out of time now. But thank you so much, Luke, Aidan and Lucy, for participating in this, and thank you everyone for tuning into this event. It's been really interesting. I was just imagining walking through, I can imagine where the firm is. I've visited the firm's office. I think you may have moved now since I was there, but where you were is right in the heart of London and the lawyer district, and it is a bustling, multicultural, busy area. And yeah, I can just picture you guys working there. So yeah, I can't wait till we can travel and perhaps catch up overseas again. But look, thank you for making yourselves available and participating in this event. And I'm sure you've got a lot of people thinking about how they too can embark on the journey. So thank you for your time and good night to everyone. And thank you for the people in alumni relations for making this possible. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.